The stars above Atraxis burned with a familiar indifference, their cold light spilling across the high towers of Serkari Prime's citadel of rule. High Chancellor Serena stood alone on the obsidian balcony outside the Hall of Judgment, her 4 eyes scanning the black horizon, as silence pressed like armor against her thoughts. It had been 10 years since the war's brutal crescendo, 10 years since she signed the Terran Accord, and 10 years since she buried her only daughter in an unmarked vault following the obliteration of Valdis Station. Lyra's body had never been recovered. Only fragments of bone, melted alloy, and a lock of silver-black hair remained. But today, the universe had opened its fist. Today, a ship bearing Lyra's genetic signature approached Serkari space under an ancient diplomatic clearance code that hadn't been used since before the war. And beside that unmistakable signature was another, Terran. Serena's jaw clenched. The very species that had bloodied the stars with her people's bones now rode in beside her daughter's name like a whispered threat. In the great hall, tension buzzed through command channels and echoed in the boots of nervous aides. General Rothan, grizzled and granite-faced, stood like a blade beside the Chancellor's throne. "It could be a trick," he growled. "A coded Heliox operation. They've done worse." Serena didn't answer. She merely raised one hand, palm downward, the command to wait, to observe, to hold. The landing field beyond the citadel glistened as the sleek, angular craft broke atmosphere, its stealth shielding retracting in prismatic waves. No banners, no insignia, just the ghost of old blood and newer secrets. The ramp hissed. Steam rolled outward. Then the figure descended. She wore ceremonial Serkari armor, scorched and altered, fused with Terran combat plating. Her face was unmistakable, though half-veiled by biomech augmentations that pulsed with faint blue neural light. Her stride was regal, but her posture held a Terran slouch. Behind her, boots heavy on the ramp, came the man. Human, scarred, eyes like cracked glass. He wore no uniform, but the way his hands hovered near his hips suggested a soldier who'd never stopped scanning for exits. "Lyra," Serena said at last, voice a razor's edge. "That name belongs to the dead." The figure stepped closer and removed her half-helm, revealing the impossible truth of her face. "Then let the dead speak," she replied, eyes burning with a hybrid fire. "Because everything you fought for was based on a lie." Gasps echoed across the hall. Even Rothan's shoulders twitched. "This is Commander Evan Trask," she continued, gesturing to the man beside her. "Former Terran recon, survivor of the Battle of Dren's Divide. My husband." The hall turned to ice. Murmurs rose like sparks. Serena took one sharp step forward, chin high, heart a thunderstorm in her chest. "You wed an enemy?" Lyra didn't flinch. "No. I married the man who uncovered the truth." With a wave of her gauntlet, she activated the first neuroweave core, an orb of soft organic shimmer that hovered mid-air and pulsed with encoded experience. The war wasn't an accident. It was built by the Heliox Trade Pact, staged attacks, false flag operations, economic sabotage masked as diplomacy. The orb projected fragments, Heliox executives in clandestine meetings, planetary logs falsified, and Valdis Station's last second before destruction. Not a Terran missile, but a Heliox detonation marked by a signature energy flare, one known only to black market engineers. The evidence hit like orbital fire. Rothan moved, but Serena stopped him with a flick of her hand. "You dare accuse the Assembly's most trusted economic partner?" "I accuse them of war forging," Lyra said, stepping even closer. "And I'm not alone. Terran Accord defectors. Serkari clerics in hiding. We followed the thread, and it ends in Heliox's treasury vault." Evan spoke then, his voice steady but weathered. "They play both sides, bleed them dry, then sell them bandages." His gaze met Serena's without fear. "You're a warrior, so fight the real enemy." For the first time in decades, Serena felt her breath catch, not from grief, not from anger, but from the unfamiliar tug of possibility. Her daughter had not returned as a prodigal. She had returned as a storm, a bridge forged in betrayal, loss, and impossible union. And the Empire Serena ruled was no longer the one she'd sworn to protect. It was a chessboard with invisible hands moving the pieces. She looked once more at Lyra, at Evan, at the sea of stunned faces in the chamber. "Take them to the Vault of Silence," she ordered finally. "Let their truths be tested by the ancient flame." Then, quieter, only for herself, she added, "And if they survive it, perhaps we all shall." The Vault of Silence was buried beneath Serkari Prime's volcanic crust, carved millennia ago into the cooled magma beds by the Dominion's founders, a place where only the most sacred truths were judged, and only those willing to bleed for them dared enter. Serena descended its spiral passageways in silence, her ceremonial robes exchanged for tactical command weave, her shoulders squared with the gravity of legacy and doubt. At her side, Lyra walked without hesitation, the soft whir of cybernetic muscle echoing against the obsidian walls, her pulse steady even as ancestral statues loomed on either side. Evan Trask trailed behind, carrying the second neuroweave core locked in a magnetic field bubble, his expression unreadable beneath the scars of battles lost and secrets won. As the triad entered the heart chamber, Julo, the High Chancellor's oldest advisor, was already preparing the trial table, an intricate lattice of neural threaded crystal interfaced with Serkari cognition sensors. "This chamber does not lie," Julo warned, his silver crest dim in the flickering biolights. "Whatever is held within these devices, it will be seen in full clarity. Intent, memory, manipulation, emotion. If there is deceit, it will burn you." Lyra merely nodded, eyes flashing as she extended her hand and fed the first core into the lattice. The chamber responded with a low, harmonic vibration, and suddenly, the room was no longer a chamber, but a battlefield, memory unfolding in omnidirectional surround. The Council of the Heliox Pact appeared first, non-human silhouettes draped in merchant guild sigils, huddled around holographic schematics of Serkari border defenses. Trask's voice echoed as the scene shifted, his own memory now projected. Infiltration logs, captured transcripts of Heliox shadow operatives embedded in both Serkari and Terran outposts, including the premeditated detonation sequence for Valdis Station's antimatter core. Blamed on the Serkari, but triggered by a Heliox contractor under diplomatic cover. Another shift, and Serena saw herself, rage-twisted and proud, ordering retaliatory strikes on Terran colonies that had never even fired a shot. She flinched. The room went still. Julo stepped back, visibly shaken. "By the twin stars," he whispered. "It's true." General Rothan, silent until now, turned away, jaw tight with shame and fury. "You mean to tell me we were puppets? That the blood of 3 billion Serkari spilled for trade margins?" Lyra didn't respond with venom or accusation. Her voice was soft, yet it cut deeper than any blade. "We were all used, General. I died thinking I was fighting for honor. I woke knowing I was just a number on a ledger." Serena said nothing, her fists clenched at her sides as the chamber dimmed and the memories faded. The silence that followed was not the ceremonial kind, but the kind that comes before tectonic shifts. "Then we must end it," Serena said finally, her voice brittle but unyielding. "We must stop the next act before it begins." Lyra nodded, stepping forward to present the second neuroweave core. "This one shows what's coming. They're planning to simulate a Serkari attack on a medical convoy, a peaceful run to new series, staged to look like another Serkari betrayal. The Terran Accord will retaliate instantly. Within days, war will resume. But this time, Heliox will step in not as a shadow force, but as a stabilizing power, offering resource control in exchange for peacekeeping. Evan activated the core. A simulated convoy projection unfolded, its metadata revealing falsified registry signatures, heliox, operatives embedded in crew rosters, and a countdown to the scheduled strike, just 6 days from now. They'll trigger it in the Ilios corridor, Evan said. It's the only place both Terran and Sarkari traffic overlap under joint navigation law. They'll make it look like a Sarkari ambush. Serena turned to Rothan. Mobilize the stealth fleet. Quietly. Pull old surveillance beacons from retirement. I want everything in that corridor watched. If a heliox vessel so much as breathes, we strike. Rothan gave a slow, sharp nod. And the assembly? Julo asked. We go to them after the strike, Serena replied. With proof, with blood. Not before. She turned then to her daughter, her once dead heir, now alive and made of both war and peace, of human and Sarkari. And you, Lyra Trask, what will you be in this? A symbol, a soldier, a daughter? Lyra met her mother's gaze without fear. All of it. But most of all, I'll be the warning the galaxy ignored once. I won't let them ignore it again. For the first time since the war, Serena's eyes softened. Then she turned. Cloak. Flaring behind her, her voice crisp with command. We hunt shadows in the corridor, and this time we bring fire. The Ilios corridor shimmered like a wound in space, an ancient trade artery laced with abandoned satellites, decommissioned way stations, and silent wrecks from wars past. It was the perfect place for a lie to be born, and the perfect place to kill one. Hidden beneath the refracted distortion fields of obsolete weather modulators, Sarkari stealth cruisers floated in wait, their hulls modified with low signature plating and coded to mimic derelict cargo haulers. On the opposite vector, a contingent of Terran scout frigates, paint-stripped, hull-scored, and jury-rigged for infiltration, moved into mirrored position, cloaked by signal scramblers installed by Evan Trask's old intelligence contacts. It was a fragile alliance held together by old guilt and newer truths, and not everyone trusted it. General Rothan had nearly called it off twice, citing Terran unpredictability, but Serena's presence aboard the Sarkari command cruiser, Vexari's, oath made retreat impossible. She stood at the forward view glass in full battle attire, her silver crown exchanged for a neural combat helm, her voice sharp as she gave low-spoken orders to her bridge crew. No weapons lock until my command, she warned. We expose the lie, not escalate the war. Beside her, Lyra monitored overlapping data feeds from both fleets, the glow from her cybernetic implants flickering in harmony with the surrounding command interface. Trask, his body half-armored in recon mesh, paced like a caged storm behind them, his Terran instincts twitching at every sensor ping. Something's coming in fast, Lyra muttered, zooming in on an inbound signal spike. Freighter class. Engine profile, but it's too clean. No drift, no scatter, no thermal lag. Show me the registry, Serena said. The ID came back. Kirill Hope, listed as a humanitarian vessel, carrying medical supplies to a devastated border moon. Registered to the Pan-Species Aid Coalition, funded in quiet truth by Heliox. And behind it, masked in its wake, 3 smaller pings, escort craft with false civilian tags and untraceable engine noise. They're here, Trask growled. Same profile as the simulations. That freighter's going to blow. Not yet, Serena said. We catch them with the blades still in hand. The tensions stretched like taut fiber as the Sarkari and Terran ships held their positions, invisible and coiled. Then the freighter altered course, slightly, subtly, toward a diplomatic relay station known to be unmanned. It would look like a deviation to avoid gravitational debris. In fact, it was heading straight for the target coordinates detailed in the memory core. A moment later, the lead escort powered up a signal spike, a precursor charge for a mimic bomb that would generate a Sarkari energy signature upon detonation. Now, Serena commanded, and the trap sprang open like a starfire blossom. Stealth fields dropped. Terran interceptors burst from cover, scrambling the escort's propulsion systems with directed EMP bursts. Sarkari vessels surged in, engines blazing with blue warlight, and surrounded the freighter before it could complete the detonation sequence. Chaos rippled through the Heliox crew. The false humanitarian vessel tried to send a distress beacon, but it was too late. Lyra had already hard-jacked into its comms via satellite override and was broadcasting a direct feed of the operation to the Assembly's emergency alert channels. Serena's voice followed, sharp and unforgiving. "This is High Chancellor Serena of the Sarkari Dominion. The so-called Kariel Hope has been intercepted carrying mimic bomb technology and false registry codes. Heliox agents are currently being detained aboard. This is not a misunderstanding. This is conspiracy." One of the disguised escort ships attempted to flee, but was caught in a tractor net fired from a Terran gunship helmed by one of Trask's former squadmates. On board that vessel was the final proof. Envoy Saren himself, wrapped in diplomatic robes, screaming legal immunity even as Trask hauled him out at pulse rifle point. "Immunity doesn't cover treason," Trask said through gritted teeth. "And today, the galaxy watches." In real time, the Assembly feed captured Saren's face as he was shackled by 2 Sarkari guards and marched to the main deck under planetary law. Serena watched the reactions flicker in the Assembly's live response channel. Shock from the Zalari conquered, outrage from the Luthen Triad, and most importantly, a grim silence from the Heliox Trade Pact's own representatives. Their feeds suddenly cut midstream. "Broadcast everything," Serena ordered, "and prepare my address." Rothan nodded silently. On the command deck, Lyra and Trask stood side by side, 2 ghosts who had returned not for vengeance, but for revelation. In the moment's pause that followed, Serena approached them both, resting one hand on her daughter's armored shoulder, the other on Trask's. "You've brought us to the edge of something old-breaking," she said. "Let's make sure what rises from the pieces is worth the blood we've spent." And with the galaxy watching, the Sarkari and Terran banners were raised side by side, for the first time in a generation, beneath the fractured stars of the corridor that once divided them. The assembly hall of the Galactic Convocation was never meant to hold silence, but as High Chancellor Serena stepped onto the central podium, her armor still marked by plasma scoring from the Ilios operation and her voice broadcast to trillions, silence reigned. Not the respectful kind, nor the wary kind, but the stunned stillness of a civilization forced to swallow its own myths. The massive holo display behind her played unfiltered footage of the Kariel Hope operation. Heliox agents armed aboard a supposedly neutral freighter, Envoy Saren's diplomatic mask ripped away, and the neural core overlays exposing Heliox's decades-long manipulation of war economics. She did not speak from a script. Serena's voice was clear and cold, a scalpel slicing through a decade of misinformation. "We were led to believe our enemies were across the stars, but they sat beside us in council. They sold us weapons with one hand and treaties with the other. Heliox did not merely profit from our conflict, they engineered it." The chamber erupted with outbursts, demands, denials, shocked murmurs, but Serena raised one gauntleted hand, and the chamber obeyed. "The Sarkari Dominion accepts its burden of responsibility," she said, and her eyes turned to the human delegation, where Terran Admiral Langston stood with arms crossed, flanked by Evan Trask, now wearing the insignia of a neutral envoy. "And we invite the Terran Accord not to vengeance, but to alliance." She turned slightly, gesturing to Lyra, who stepped forward and activated the final neuroweave core. What unfolded was not more evidence, but a vision. Projected simulations of coordinated rebuilding efforts, Sarkari terraformers aiding shattered Terran colonies, Terran engineers repairing Sarkari orbital arrays, joint patrols protecting neutral zones. It was idealistic, and it was possible. "My daughter, born of war and remade by its cost, is proof of what hybrid strength looks like," Serena said, her voice warming with something deeper than pride. "Her bond with a Terran soldier did not dilute our bloodline. It forged something stronger than either alone." A few council members scoffed. Others stood in hushed awe. But none could ignore the data or the sheer audacity of the Sarkari chancellor, offering olive branches with one hand while holding truth like a blade in the other. The turning point came when the Heliox Pact's own internal communications, decrypted and authenticated, were displayed in full, showing not just wartime manipulation, but peacetime sabotage. Engineered famine shortages, anti-human propaganda, planted in Sarkari info feeds, energy monopolies enforced via treaty loopholes. The assembly cracked. One by one, member worlds broke diplomatic ties with Heliox. Arrest warrants began to ping across systems, and aboard Heliox headquarters on Astra Nin, panic erupted as planetary authorities began raids within hours of the broadcast. In the wake of this chaos, Serena returned to Sarkari Prime, her chambers no longer weighted by ghosts, but humming with new energy. General Rothan, once the emblem of old loyalties, now oversaw the integration of joint task forces. Julo worked to revise ancient Dominion law to allow dual-species representation in high command, and Lyra, still hybrid, still marked by war, stood at the heart of it all. Her cybernetic eyes scanning reports from frontier outposts as she prepared to lead the first joint diplomatic mission beyond their known sectors. In the quiet after the storm, Evan found Serena atop the Tower of Memory, gazing out toward the stars that had once only brought her sorrow. "You think they'll actually trust us now?" he asked. "Not all at once," she replied, her voice softer now. "But piece by piece they'll see what was nearly lost to a lie. And that truth, even when it hurts, builds stronger empires than comfort ever did." He smiled, then held out a faded scrap of fabric. His old Terran military patch, the symbol, now barely visible, worn thin by time. She took it, fingers closing around it gently. "You are no longer their soldier," she said. "You are ours now." "I'm hers," he said simply, nodding toward Lyra below, now surrounded by a circle of young cadets from both empires. Serena looked down as well, the corner of her mouth twitching with the rarest expression of all, hope. And somewhere deep, within the stars, the echo of war faded, replaced by the hum of reconstruction and the quiet, relentless march of truth reclaiming its throne.